The Turnbull government will reveal an $11.9 billion projected improvement to the budget bottom line on Monday, confirming Australia is on track to return to surplus by the end of the decade. The reduction in net debt, the figure most commonly used by economists, means it will now peak at a lower than expected 19.2% of GDP in 2018-19, down from the 19.8% forecast in May. Gross debt will be $23 billion lower than forecast, a full 1% lower than the budget predicted, but it will still reach a whopping $583 billion by 2020-21. Crucially, from this current financial year, the government will no longer have to borrow money to pay for everyday expenditure or on pensions, health and education, a year ahead of schedule. The improvement to the budget bottom line represents more good news for Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull and the coalition, who have enjoyed a strong end to the year by winning the Bullock and New England by-elections, passing same-sex marriage laws and forcing Labour Senator Sam Dastyari to resign from Parliament. It will also potentially give the government a little extra headroom to fund its plans for personal income tax cuts for middle-income earners. The smaller than expected debt is a result in part of improvements in company profits and stronger employment figures, which have offset sluggish wages growth and helped spur the economy, while spending cuts have also played a part. One of the savings the government is expected to outline in the update is about $2.8 billion from the university sector. This is to be achieved by pausing indexation on payments to the sector, after proposed cuts to university funding were blocked by the Senate. New figures released last week by the ABS showed that 61,600 jobs were created last month, and 383,000 had been created in the last year, while the participation rate had risen to a 6-year high of 65.5%. Ahead of the release of the budget figures on Monday, Treasurer Scott Morrison said the figures demonstrated the Turnbull government's prudent economic management, including staying the course to keep expenditure under control and return the budget back to balance. In the years ahead we intend to make further progress on bringing down the debt as we get the budget back into balance as promised, he said. Our responsible budget management means we are now in a position to no longer be borrowing to pay for everyday, recurrent, expenditure, like schools funding, Medicare and welfare, a year earlier than forecast. We are acting, as we promised, in a fiscally responsible way to reduce our debt so that we can sustainably fund the essential services like health, schools as well as infrastructure, that Australians rely on. By 2027-28, the government projects gross debt will be about $685 billion, down from the $725 billion forecast in May. The reductions means taxpayers will not have to outlay $2.3 billion in additional interest payments to service the debt over the next 4 years. Ahead of the release of the update, Labour Treasury spokesman Chris Bowen called for the government to drop its plans for university funding cuts and criticised the government's plan to again attempt to cut taxes for businesses with a turnover of more than $50 million. In the United States, President Donald Trump appears to have reached a deal with congressional Republicans to cut the corporate tax rate to 21% and is preparing to legislate the plan.